Hi, I'm Whitney, and I'm the writer of the Everyday Gourmet Food blog. Today I'm going to show you the how-to to make the fast pulled pork sandwiches recipe that's posted on the blog. The recipe actually has three parts. It has the pork itself, it has the Carolina sauce that you put on it, which is a vinegar sauce, and a spicy slaw that goes on it as well. I'm going to first show you about the pork, but the secret to this whole recipe and the reason that it's called fast pulled pork sandwiches is this gadget right here. This is a pressure cooker. Very different from a slow cooker. In fact, it's the opposite. So pressure cooker is effectively putting more heat and steam into the food in a concentrated way so that it cooks much faster without losing any moisture at all. So what could take, in the case of pulled pork, many hours to roast in the oven or to cook on a smoker could take only a half an hour to 40 minutes, which is what you're going to see in this recipe today. So very exciting, since you can now make pulled pork sandwiches that are almost as good as off the smoker on a weeknight. So first and foremost, this particular pressure cooker is made by Cuisinart. It's about $100 at Williams-Sonoma. There are lots of them out there, both stovetop and electric. I prefer the electric model just because it sits on the countertop, it doesn't take a burner on the stove, and it doesn't seem to have that crazy fitting lid that makes me a little nervous. So this guy here has effectively a lock on top, and then a removable insertable bowl that's covered in Teflon that really means you get no stick, and it's very, very easy to clean. So first and foremost, what we're going to do is put all the ingredients we need into the pressure cooker. It's very simple. I had about 2.5 pounds of pork shoulder, also called pork butt. I trimmed it of pretty much all of the fat that I could get off of it and then cut it into about 2-inch cubes. And we're going to put all of this meat right into the bowl of the pressure cooker. And you just want to spread it into a relatively even layer on the bottom. So wash my hands real quick. Then what we're going to do is add about 1.5 cups of water. You're welcome to use stock. I've experimented with beef stock, chicken stock, and plain water, and I found the results are not that different. So a little easier to just use water. And then we're going to add some seasonings, and in this case, salt. I prefer to use fine sea salt. Feel free to use whatever you like, but I recommend not using iodized table salt just because it's so much saltier. It's more concentrated flavor. So salt, pepper, a little cayenne pepper, some paprika, and some cumin, and we're going to add a teaspoon of each. Very easy. I tend to go by sight or feel rather than measuring spoons, but feel free to do what makes you more comfortable. So we'll add a teaspoon of each one here. Okay, and that adds our cayenne, cumin, and paprika, and then we'll do some fresh ground black pepper. So again, just about a teaspoon of each. And then what we're going to do is lock the lid, set it on high pressure, and cook it for about 30 minutes. Exactly 30 minutes. And then we're going to stop and come back when the meat is done cooking so that you can see what happens when we go to shred the meat or chop it. I'll talk about both, to actually serve it for sandwiches. So let me go ahead and get this set to go. So you can place the lid on top here until you feel it fasten, then lock it in place. And then what you want to do is put this on high pressure. In my case, I hit it twice to do that. Then add the time you want. So I'll go ahead and hold this down until we get to 30 minutes and then just press start. You'll notice that it takes a little time to come up to full pressure. There we go, hit start. And eventually there's a little red dot here. You can see an inset red piece of plastic that'll come up to the surface when it's at full pressure. And then it'll go ahead and start counting down once it reaches full pressure. So once that's complete, we'll come back. I'll tell you more about what to do, so stay tuned. Hi, we're back. So we just had the timer go off on the pressure cooker, and what we're going to do now is release the pressure, which is called a quick release, drain the meat, and then we'll go ahead and put the meat on the cutting board to get it ready for serving. So the first thing you want to do is you won't be able to unlock this until you release the pressure. So the first thing we're going to do, there's a small little ring that you probably can't see here on the top of the pressure cooker that gives me the ability to turn the dial and go ahead and release all the pressure. So I notice this is right under one of my pendant lamps, so I'm going to move it back a little bit. And then, be ready for some loud noise. There we go. You want to wait till the pressure completely stops. So that'll tell you that the pot is ready to be opened. You hear it dying down already. Almost there. And don't try to open the pot prematurely. You obviously don't want to get a steam burn, which can be very, very bad, very painful. The stovetop methods work a little bit different than the electric pressure cooker, so make sure you read the instruction book for your pressure cooker before you do any of this. So you can hear the pressure is almost completely stopped. I mentioned earlier that there's a little red plastic indicator to tell you when the pressure, it's completely pressed against the surface when the pressure is high, and it falls back when the pressure is released. So as soon as I see that little red plastic indicator fall back, then I know it's safe to open the top. So it should stop here any second. And there is another method which is called a natural release, which is effectively you just turn the pressure cooker off and let it naturally release over time. You don't actually flip that little button that lets it out so quickly. So the little red indicator has gone ahead and opened, so I'm going to open the pressure cooker. Again, be careful. So it is going to be a little drippy, so I'll put this in the sink. And then what we're going to do is take some hot pads, because of course this is hot inside, remove the interior cooking unit, and then I'm going to go ahead and drain this meat. Now you could do this, I'm not going to save the juices or anything, so you could do this into anything. Maybe you could reuse this as stock or whatever you wish. And now that we've got the meat drained, effectively what we're going to do is pour the meat onto the cutting board so that we can either shred it or chop it. And I'll show you a little bit about that too. There's two different schools of thought on that. Shredding is done with 2 forks, which is really important to do if you're taking meat off a smoker so that you make sure you separate the threads of the meat. If you want to do chopping, typically off of a smoker, that's going to be a little bit more in large chunks. When you work with a pressure cooker, the meat itself is so tender that it comes out about the same either way. So I'll show you both techniques. Typically you want to let the meat cool for just a couple minutes, so you're not dealing with too hot a meat. But basically you can take 2 forks and just start to gently tear the meat apart. And you can see it's just ridiculously tender. So when I do that, effectively it's almost the same technique to go ahead, or I should say the same result, to go ahead and chop it. And so I'm just going to run my knife one direction through the meat, and I'm going to do the same the other direction. And what I get are very small edible pieces that will go very nicely onto our pulled pork sandwich. So believe it or not, that's about as simple as it is. So the next thing we're going to do is put all the meat into a pan. We're going to add what's called the Carolina vinegar sauce, which goes on top of the sandwich as well, and we'll have some extra to put on the table. But this is basically a very simple concoction. The recipe is on the blog post. It's made with a bit of ketchup, a lot of cider vinegar, some cayenne, and some celery salt. That's it. Very, very simple recipe. So we're going to add about 3/4 of a cup of the vinegar sauce to the meat in a small saucepan and just heat it over low on the stove. Since this has now been resting and cooling and getting exposed to air, we'll make sure the meat is nice and hot when we serve it on our sandwiches. So I'm going to go ahead and empty this pot, put the meat in, add the sauce here, the vinegar sauce, stir it together, and put it on a burner over low for about 5 minutes or so while I get the rest of the ingredients ready, and then we'll come back and show you how to assemble your perfect pulled pork sandwich. All right, we're ready to assemble our fabulous pulled pork sandwiches. So like I said, I took the shredded meat, put it in a saucepan, put it on the stove with that Carolina vinegar sauce, and heated it just so it was warmed through. Meanwhile, I toasted some brioche buns, and I'm basically just now going to take the meat and top it with some of the sauce additionally. As you can see, I've got the rest of the sauce here for squirting at eater's pleasure, and some slaw. The slaw is also very simple. The recipe's on the blog post. It's some angel hair shredded cabbage that I like, the one that has a little bit of carrot in it, a little bit of mayonnaise, a jalapeno pepper that's been finely chopped or minced, and a little bit of lime juice and salt. And that's it. So it adds a little bit of tangy zest to the rest of the sandwich, just like the vinegar sauce does. So we're going to go ahead and take the warm pork, place that on the bottom bun here, and we're going to pile that nice and high. All right, doesn't that look great? So there we go. Do that for the second sandwich, since I'm not eating alone today. My husband's going to join me. Get that piled on the bun here. All right. Now that we have our meat piled nice and high on that sandwich, feel free to add as much as you like. I'm going to do just a little bit of this sauce here, which again is a simple ketchup, apple cider vinegar, cayenne, and celery salt. And then we'll finish it off with a nice heaping serving of slaw for a little crunch and a little zest. And that is that. You want to serve the rest of that lovely vinegar sauce at the table for anybody who wants to add a little bit more to their plate. Oops. But that is our sandwich. So I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy the pressure cooker. There's lots of great things you can do with it in the kitchen, and bon appetit.